Ethan Collins had always believed life moved in predictable lines, especially his own. A quiet routine, a stable job in Vancouver, and a small circle of friends kept his days simple and manageable. He wasn't unhappy, but he wasn't excited either. Most mornings felt the same, and most evenings ended with the same tired sigh as he collapsed onto his couch with a book or old movie. It was a safe life, silent and steady, but it lacked something he couldn't name, a feeling he thought only existed in stories other people lived. He walked into the old Riverside bookstore on a cool late afternoon, hoping for a moment of peace after a long week. The air smelled like worn pages and cedar, the kind of scent that felt like a blanket wrapped around tired minds. The shop wasn't crowded, just a few customers wandering between shelves, and the steady hum of soft music played in the background. It was the kind of place where the world slowed down, where the warmth of yellow lights made the chaos outside feel miles away. Ethan ran a hand through his hair as he walked toward the fiction section, trying to push away thoughts of emails, deadlines, and the constant pressure of life. His shoulders relaxed a little, his breaths eased, and he let himself drift through the aisles, pulling out books at random, flipping through pages, searching for something new to get lost in. But then he froze, not because of a book, not because of a sound, but because the air felt different. Lighter somehow. Brighter even. He didn't know why at first, but when he lifted his eyes he saw her and everything made sense. She stood near the front window, the late sun settling over her like a soft gold glow. Her hair fell loosely around her shoulders, catching the light in a way that made it seem unreal. Her posture was relaxed, her expression calm, yet something about her presence felt electric, like the air shifted around her. Her dress brushed lightly against her knees as she leaned into her book, completely lost in whatever world she was reading. Ethan stared without meaning to, caught off guard by how natural and peaceful she looked. She didn't seem like someone passing through the store, she seemed like she belonged to that moment, placed there with purpose. He tried to look away, but his eyes kept drifting back, pulled by something he couldn't explain. Her presence felt magical, gentle yet powerful, the kind that makes you pause inside your own life. The kind that wakes something quiet but deep in your chest. He stepped closer, pretending to browse a shelf while stealing quick glances in her direction. He wasn't the type to stare at strangers, but she didn't feel like a stranger. She felt familiar in a strange, impossible way, like a memory he couldn't fully grasp. She smiled suddenly, not at him, but at something she read on the page, a small meaningful smile that softened her entire face. It was that smile that hit him, quiet but strong, like someone lightly tapping his heart and saying, "Pay attention." He wondered who she was, what she was reading, what kind of person smiled like that at a line in a book. He wondered if she was from Vancouver or visiting, wondered what her voice sounded like, wondered why someone he had never met felt like the most important part of the room. He took a step toward her, planning to say something, anything. Even if it felt awkward, maybe ask about the book she was holding, maybe just greet her with a simple hello. His heart wasn't racing, but it wasn't calm either. It was aware, alert, nervous in the best and strangest way. But before he reached her, she closed her book, held it lightly against her chest, and looked toward the exit as if reminding herself of a promise she couldn't break. She took one soft breath, a breath that almost looked like hesitation, then walked toward the door with quiet steps. Ethan froze, struck by unexpected panic. He wanted to stop her, to ask her name, to say something before she left, but the words stuck in his throat. He had always been careful with his emotions, always slow to move, slow to speak, slow to risk. But something in him screamed to act now, before the moment slipped through his fingers. Still, he hesitated, and she stepped outside, disappearing into the fading light. For a few seconds he stayed still, caught between fear and regret. The sound of the shop faded into the background, and the world outside the window felt further away than ever. A quiet ache started forming in his chest, not painful, but uncomfortable in the way unspoken moments usually were. Finally, he rushed toward the door, hoping she hadn't gone far, hoping the universe would give him another chance. He pushed the door open, eyes scanning the sidewalk, the small crowd passing by, the street across from the bookstore. But she was gone. Not slowly fading away, not turning a corner in sight, but gone completely, as if she had been a brief dream that ended too early. Ethan stepped out onto the sidewalk, running a hand over his face in frustration. He didn't understand why it bothered him so much, Why someone he hadn't even spoken to left him feeling like he had lost something important. But the feeling wouldn't leave. It sat heavy inside him, reminding him over and over that moments like this didn't happen often. Not to him. Not to someone who usually kept his heart tucked neatly away. He looked around again as if she might suddenly appear, but she didn't. The street continued on, indifferent to his confusion, indifferent to the strange spark that had been lit and then snuffed out within minutes. He knew he should go home, but he stayed for a while, standing under the dim light of the bookstore sign, thinking about her face, her posture, the gentle way she smiled at her book. He replayed the moment again and again, wondering why it mattered so much. Eventually, he walked back inside to pay for a book he didn't even want anymore. The cashier greeted him, but he barely heard. His mind was somewhere else, stuck in the space between what happened and what almost happened. As he left the store, the ache in his chest deepened just a little, not enough to break him, but enough to make him wish he had been braver. After all, how often did people feel something like that on an ordinary day, at an ordinary place, in an ordinary moment? He went home later than usual, kicking off his shoes and falling onto the couch, but the peace he hoped for didn't come. The memory of that brief moment replayed again as he stared at the ceiling. Who was she? Why did it feel like she had stepped into his life for a reason, even if only for a few minutes? And why did it hurt to think he might never see her again? He didn't have answers, only a strange pull in his chest he didn't know how to shake. For days he thought about her at random moments during work, during dinner, even during conversations with friends. Normally, he let passing attractions fade quietly. But this wasn't fading. If anything, it was growing. He found himself returning to the bookstore the next evening, telling himself he just needed fresh air. But he knew why he was really there. He searched the aisles, glanced at the window, waited longer than he meant to, but she never appeared. He returned again the next day and the day after and the day after that. Not because he expected her to show up each time, but because something inside him refused to let go. He told himself he was being foolish, that this was nothing more than curiosity, but the truth went deeper. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something strong, something rare, something he couldn't ignore even if he tried. A week passed, and just when he began to accept that he would never see her again, fate, quiet, patient and strangely kind, had plans of its own. But that moment would come later. For now, all he had was a spark he couldn't forget. A moment that stayed soft but powerful inside his heart. A moment that felt magical enough to shift the direction of his life without him realizing it. And that was how everything truly began. Not with words. Not with touch, not with a grand meeting. But with a feeling he never expected. A feeling he couldn't ignore. Ethan never expected a single moment with a stranger to take over his thoughts. Yet the woman from the bookstore stayed in his mind like a soft echo he couldn't push away. A week passed and he tried to continue his life as if nothing had changed, but each day felt slightly off. His routine felt too quiet, his evenings too long, and every time he passed the mirror, he caught a look in his own eyes that seemed to ask, "Why didn't you speak to her?" He tried to distract himself with work, but even the long hours couldn't silence the memory of her smile. It wasn't even a smile directed at him, yet it stayed with him as if it belonged to his life somehow. He told himself it was silly to feel anything for someone he didn't know. But logic didn't work on feelings that came from places deeper than reason. A friend invited him to Seattle for a short visit, and Ethan agreed, hoping a change of scenery would help him reset his mind. The bus ride was long and quiet, the view outside shifting from mountains to city streets, but nothing pulled him away from his thoughts. The moment he closed his eyes, he saw her standing in that sunlight, peaceful and unbothered by the world. The first morning in Seattle was cold and rainy, the kind of rain that came down softly but steadily, covering the sidewalks with silver reflections. Ethan left his friend's apartment early, wanting a warm drink and a calm moment to think. He found a small cafe near the bay, tucked between a bakery and a bookshop. He pushed open the door, and the scent of fresh coffee and vanilla hit him instantly. The warmth inside made the rain outside feel far away. He stepped forward, ordered a simple black coffee, and turned around to find a place to sit. And then his breath caught. His feet stopped. His heart stumbled. There she was. The woman he had been thinking about for days, sitting by the window with her hands around a warm mug, watching the rain pour down the glass like it was telling her a story. His mind went blank for a moment, shock rushing through him like a sudden wave. She looked the same as she did in the bookstore, peaceful, gentle, lost in whatever thoughts she carried. The only difference was the rain instead of sunlight, creating a soft, dreamy glow around her. Ethan didn't know if fate was being kind or cruel, but he didn't waste a second this time. He walked toward her, his steps quiet but steady. She lifted her eyes at the exact moment he reached her table, and her expression shifted from confusion to recognition. "Hey, weren't you in that bookstore in Vancouver?" she asked with a small surprised smile. Her voice was warm, soft, and exactly the kind of sound he imagined someone like her would have, approachable but calm. "Yeah," he said, trying to steady his voice. "I didn't expect to see you again." "Maybe some people are meant to cross paths more than once," she said, her smile widening just a little. He asked if he could join her, and she nodded, moving her cup aside to make space. Ethan sat down, still amazed that she was really there. Not a memory, not a thought, but right in front of him. Her name was Lily Bennett, she told him. She had grown up in different cities because her family moved often, and she had recently been living in Portland before coming to Seattle to figure out the next step in her life. She liked quiet places, bookstores, rainy days, and long walks that helped her clear her mind. Ethan felt himself relax as she talked, not because he was getting comfortable too quickly, but because her presence made it easy. She wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't guarded or distant. She was simply herself, kind, thoughtful, and gently open. He told her about his life in Vancouver, his job, the calm routine he lived in, and how unexpected it felt to see her again. Lily laughed softly, not in a mocking way, but in a way that said she understood what he meant. Their conversation flowed naturally, without gaps or awkward pauses. It felt like catching up with someone he had known for years, not minutes. They talked about favorite books, movies, places they wanted to travel, dreams they once had but put aside for practical reasons. Lily had a habit of looking down at her cup whenever she talked about something personal, like she was scared the wrong detail might reveal too much. Ethan noticed it, but he didn't push. At one point she said, "I've been trying to rebuild things lately," though she didn't explain what that meant. He nodded gently, understanding without needing to know the details. Hours passed without either of them realizing. The rain outside slowed, the cafe grew quieter, and the warm lights above their table made the moment feel safe and unhurried. But beneath the calm atmosphere, Ethan felt something else building. A subtle worry, small but noticeable. There was a heaviness in Lily's eyes sometimes, a distant look that didn't match her smile. It appeared when she paused between sentences or when she thought he wasn't watching. He sensed she was hiding something, not a dangerous secret, but a personal one, something that had left a mark on her heart. He didn't want to push her, but he also felt she was carrying something too heavy for one person alone. When their cups were empty, Ethan offered to walk her outside. Lily agreed. They stepped into the cool air, the rain now just a quiet drizzle. The clouds above were still heavy, but the street lights reflected off the pavement like scattered stars. They walked slowly, not because either of them needed to, but because neither wanted the moment to end. There was a closeness forming between them, soft but undeniable. Lily glanced at him a few times, her expression thoughtful, as if she was fighting with herself about something she wanted to say. Ethan didn't ask. He just kept pace beside her, giving her space to speak if she wished. When they finally reached the end of the street, she stopped and took a breath. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag, her shoulders lifting slightly with tension. "There's something you should know," she said, her voice lower than before, almost trembling. Ethan turned toward her, waiting. "I didn't leave Portland because I wanted to," she said quietly, looking away from him. "I left because I needed to start over." Her words hung in the air like a fragile truth, one she had been carrying for far too long. She didn't explain further, not yet. She didn't tell him what she had been through, or why she seemed afraid of going too deep into her past. She just looked at him with eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope, as if waiting to see whether he would step closer or walk away. Ethan didn't leave. He didn't move at all for a moment, letting her know that he wasn't going anywhere. She released a shaky breath, her hands trembling slightly before she crossed her arms as if trying to hold herself together. "I don't know if I'm ready to talk about everything yet," she whispered. "I just don't want to build something on top of a lie of silence." Ethan shook his head gently. "You don't owe me anything," he said. You don't have to explain before you're ready. She looked at him, surprised by the softness in his tone. I just want to be honest, she said. I don't want you to think I'm someone I'm not. You're someone I want to know, he replied. With whatever truth you carry. A soft trembling smile appeared on her face, and for the first time since they stepped outside, her shoulders relaxed just a little. The evening around them felt quiet and deep, the kind of quiet that comes right before a turning point in someone's life. Ethan didn't know everything about Lily, but he knew enough to understand she was trying to rebuild, trying to trust, trying to move forward. And somehow, without either of them planning it, their lives had crossed at the exact moment they both needed. Something real, something honest, something gentle, something that didn't demand but simply existed, welcoming and warm. As the wind brushed past them and the last drops of rain fell, Lily whispered, "Thank you." Not for anything he said, but for the space he gave her, the patience he showed, the understanding he didn't even realize he had offered. And deep inside, Ethan felt the beginning of something he couldn't define yet, but something strong enough to shift the path of his life once again. Fate wasn't done with them. Not even close. Lily didn't speak right away after her quiet confession. She stood under the streetlight with her hands wrapped around her bag strap, her shoulders tense like she was holding her breath. Ethan didn't rush her. He sensed her fear, but he also sensed something more. The courage it took for her to say even that small truth. The night felt heavy but calm. The street was almost empty, and the soft glow from the cafe behind them flickered on the wet pavement. It was the kind of moment where people either walked away or grew closer, and Ethan knew he didn't want to walk away. When she finally spoke again, her voice was thin. I went through something difficult in Portland, she said, eyes fixed on the ground, and I'm still trying to get past it. Her hands trembled slightly as she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The movement was small, nervous, and honest. I don't need to know everything right now, Ethan said, keeping his tone steady and warm. You can tell me only what you want to share. She looked up, surprised by his patience, as if she expected him to lose interest or step back. Maybe others had walked away before. Maybe someone in her past had made her believe opening up was dangerous. They walked slowly through the quiet street, letting the night settle around them. Lily took a deep breath before continuing. I was in a long relationship, she said. One I thought would last. For a brief moment her voice cracked, but she kept going. It ended badly. Not because of anything dramatic, just emotional damage that took too long to see. She told him how she kept trying to fix things, how she held on to someone who had already let go, and how she woke up one morning realizing she didn't even recognize herself anymore. The sadness in her eyes wasn't about heartbreak, but about losing her own confidence. She had spent months trying to rebuild the pieces of herself that had cracked slowly over time. I left Portland because staying there felt like standing inside a memory I didn't want anymore, she said. I needed someplace new, someplace quiet. Ethan listened without interrupting. He didn't judge her story or compare it to anything. He simply allowed her to speak, and something about that made her shoulders relax a little at a time. I didn't want to bring that pain into something new, she said softly. I didn't want anyone to feel responsible for the mess I'm still sorting through. You don't have to be completely healed to deserve something good, Ethan said, surprising even himself with his words. You just have to be honest, and you already are. Lily's expression softened, touched in a way she hadn't expected. She had feared he might see her as broken, as someone carrying too much weight, but instead he spoke as if her honesty made her stronger, not weaker. They reached the harbor, where the gentle water reflected small lights from the nearby buildings. The air was cold, but neither of them cared. The moment felt too important, too fragile to break. Lily walked a few steps ahead, then turned back toward him. Why are you being so patient with me? She asked quietly, not in irritation but in confusion. Most people don't stay when things get complicated. Ethan stepped closer, hands in his pockets. Maybe I'm not like most people, he said. And maybe you deserve someone who doesn't run at the first sign of difficulty. A soft, unexpected laugh left her lips, not a loud one, but one filled with relief, like something heavy inside her loosened. They sat on a bench overlooking the calm water. The wind carried the scent of rain and salt, and the soft sound of waves brushing the shore felt like a quiet reassurance. Ethan turned slightly toward her, giving her room to speak or stay silent, whichever she needed. Lily stared at the water for a long moment before saying, "You know what scares me?" Ethan waited. "That I'll start to care about someone again before I'm fully ready," she whispered. "That I'll go too fast or expect too much or feel too deeply and hurt someone without meaning to." "Caring isn't a mistake," Ethan said. "And you're not going to hurt someone just because you're still healing." She looked at him with eyes that shimmered faintly in the moonlight, eyes that carried both fear and hope. "How do you know?" she asked. "Because you're thinking about it," he replied. "People who truly care about someone don't accidentally break them." That answer struck something deep inside her, because she didn't look away this time. She held his gaze for several long seconds, letting his words sink in, letting herself feel the comfort they brought. Ethan didn't touch her, didn't move too close, didn't make the moment heavy. He simply sat beside her with steady patience, offering her a place to rest her thoughts without pressure. After a few minutes of silence, Lily spoke again. "It feels strange," she said. "But sitting here with you, it doesn't feel wrong." "It doesn't feel wrong to me either," Ethan responded gently. Her breathing softened, and for the first time, she allowed herself to relax completely, leaning back against the bench, letting the moment simply exist. As the night grew colder, Ethan offered her his jacket, not in a dramatic way, but simply because he noticed she was shivering. She hesitated at first but eventually accepted it, slipping into the warmth with a grateful smile that made something warm spread through his chest. They walked back toward the center of the city slowly, neither wanting the night to end yet. Lily spoke more freely now, sharing pieces of her childhood, the cities she lived in, the dreams she once had of becoming an illustrator. Ethan told her about his quiet life, how he often hid behind routine, how he never expected someone to walk into his life and shift it with just a moment. "You make it sound like I did something big," Lily said softly, almost embarrassed. "You did," Ethan replied. "You walked into a bookstore at the exact moment I needed to realize something was missing from my life." She blushed slightly, brushing a hand over her cheek as if embarrassed by how warm it felt. When they finally reached her apartment building, Lily stopped on the first step, turning back toward him. The light above the door made a soft halo around her hair, making her look almost as she did in the bookstore. Peaceful, gentle, almost magical. "I don't know where this is going," she said honestly. "I'm not good at pretending everything is perfect. But talking to you, being with you, it feels right, even if I don't fully understand it yet." Ethan nodded. "We don't have to rush anything," he said. "We don't have to name it, define it, or force it. We can just see where it goes." Her eyes softened again and she whispered, "I'd like that." A small warm silence settled between them, the kind of silence that came from two people who understood each other more than they should after such a short time. She handed his jacket back, their fingers brushing for a brief second, and even that simple touch carried something gentle and sincere. "Good night, Ethan," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Good night, Lily," he replied. She stepped inside, turning once more to give him a small, meaningful smile. A smile that promised a beginning, not an ending. As Ethan walked away, he felt something shift inside him, something new and quietly powerful. It wasn't love yet, but it was something real, something honest, something worth following. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be simple, not for her, not for him, but for the first time in a long time, he felt hope blooming in his chest, warm and steady. The night felt brighter, the air calmer, and he realized one thing with complete certainty. This wasn't just a chance meeting. This was the beginning of something neither of them could ignore.